So right now I'd like to introduce our member and volunteer of the Government and Community Relations Advisory Group, Julie Evans, to the stage. She'll be our moderator for the first panel this morning.
Thank you, Robin. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many people out today. I will be moderating panel 1, which will explain the second suite process. We will have 2 speakers. They will speak one at a time for 10 minutes each, and then we will open the floor for a few minutes for questions, and then move on to panel number 2. We do have to keep our timing pretty succinct. We got a little bit of a late start, so bear with us if we don't get to your question right away. So our panelists for panel 1 are At.Andrea Miller, the General Manager of Infrastructure and Growth Management for the City of Barrie, and also John Connell, the Implementation Manager for the County of Simcoe.
So thanks so much, everybody, for having me. As I was mentioned, my name is At.Andrea Miller, and I am the General Manager of Infrastructure and Growth Management at the City. So the division spans economic development, engineering, planning and building, and our roads, parks and fleet, and our water, wastewater, and landfill department. So it's a huge portfolio, but it is so important to ensuring that we have the infrastructure necessary to grow in the city. And second suites is a really important part of how we believe that we are going to be able to tackle the housing first challenge that the mayor mentioned. There we go. We can see my presentation. Where's my presentation? So you guys can obviously see it someplace else. So they asked me to talk a little bit about second suites. I only have 10 minutes, so it's going to be a very quick overview, but there's lots of good information that is available on our website. So as you know, second suites are also known as basement apartments. They may know them as accessory units, all kinds of different terminology. And really what's important is that it's self-contained. It has a private kitchen, a bathroom, and there is definitely a separation to the main unit. I think it's important to understand that second suites don't necessarily have to be in the basement. They can be on an upper floor. You can configure the building in multiple different ways. And as a result of some changes to provincial legislation, you are also able to have your unit detached from your main building, so in an accessory structure. And the other thing that is important to understand is that there is the opportunity to have more than one second suite on your property. So in fact, we can have up to 3 units on a particular property, and I think that that's important to understand as well. Really important to understand that our zoning bylaw does set some standards that are important to realize when we are dealing with second suites. Parking is particularly important to understand how many parking spots you need to have per unit. That is a big neighborhood concern often when we are dealing with second suites. And you also need to ensure that the unit is registered with the city. So again, for it to be a legal, and that's what we always like to see, is a legal suite, that you need to have all your permits in place and you need to have it registered. And another important piece to understand with second suites is that there are no development charges that are associated with second suites, and so that is another commitment to making second suites affordable. The last thing I wanted to point out, just in terms of second suites in the city of Barrie, is to understand that currently we do not allow second suites in the Georgian College neighborhood area. That is something that the city has decided to do when second suites were allowed provincially as of right. However, we have been bringing forward some recommendations for council's consideration at a staff level to potentially change that restriction in the Georgian College neighborhood. Obviously, there's a lot of demand for rental units in that area, but there are also a number of community concerns, and we're working to try and address that, and that information will be in front of council shortly. So in terms of what are the opportunities, I think Mayor Lehman stole a little bit of my thunder earlier to talk about the fact that yes, second suites can be affordable, but they're not always affordable, but they still play in a very important role. And the role is that they are increasing rental housing stock in the city, which means that other units that may be more affordable are available for people who need them because people are sort of moving up to a different unit. And then the other thing is that for many of your clients, it is a tool to help them afford their main dwelling, because there is that rental income coming in, which is really important, particularly given the housing dollars that we are certainly seeing in the city of Barrie. And I think that it's really important, as I indicated earlier, to make sure that you do these units right, and that you are having an opportunity to ensure that it's safe. Our CBO, Michael Janata, is on the next panel. He's going to talk about making sure that the units that are being built are safe, and that they are actually providing a real benefit to our growing community. Implications. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is the fact that turning a blind eye when you're out in the community and you're seeing units that have second suites, accessory units, or you have clients that are looking to create this as part of their real estate program, is not something that we want to be promoting. We want to be working with all of you to ensure that when you have clients or when you have renters who are looking for accessory units, that we are helping you any way that we possibly can to do these units in a safe and legal way. There's lots of great guides. Our team is available to help you through that process and your clients through that process, and that is how we are going to ensure that our community continues to grow and develop and be the vibrant, great home that we want it to be when it is legal and when it is safe. So please let us help you to achieve that objective. I mentioned a little bit about parking, and I'd say that from a city perspective, a planning department, a zoning enforcement perspective, parking is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have related to second suites, because we do require there to be a parking space per unit, and sometimes the driveways don't always accommodate the number of people who have vehicles that may be in the main unit or in the second suite. So we really need to be working with the homeowners and to make sure that we have some place for people to be parking and not creating a challenge. Last couple things I wanted to talk about is the process. So if you want to do a second suite in the city of Barrie, my first recommendation is making sure that you understand the zoning and understanding what you need to be creating the details, particularly as I mentioned about the parking and unit sizes. And if you are in the Georgian College area, that they're not legally required. We all know that they are there, and what we're trying to do is ensure that we can to get them to be safe. Apply for your building permit. Michael's going to talk more to you about that, but we really, really want you to get a building permit to do these. We've made it easy for you. You can do it online through our At.Lease system, and there's a great coordination that happens in that way, that we are able to ensure that all city comments are coordinated back to you, and it is a much faster and more effective process for both you and for the city. Complete all your inspections. If you fail to call for inspections during the process of doing a second suite, all it's going to do is take more time for your clients, more time for you, and it's going to be frustrating for everybody involved. So encourage you, again, to use the At.Lease system and get your inspections. You'll do your final approvals and then make sure it gets registered, and then you're off and able to rent that unit. Really, the last thing I wanted to reinforce from you from the city's perspective is that we know that second suites are an important part of our rental housing stock. Yes, some of them are more affordable than others, but again, it is a very important piece of the overall housing first approach that we need to be continuing to build in the city. And my team and everybody at the city really wants to do what we can to help you through that process. Turn it over to John.
Thanks, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here with you today. It's nice to have that very festive tree behind us. I don't want to scare anyone, but 5 weeks today will be Christmas Day. Santa Claus is coming to town, whether you like it or not. 10-year community affordable housing and homelessness prevention strategy, and how second suites fit into that. It's actually going to be good for my back sitting up here, because I need to sit up straight to see the screen. So there's the policy context for our strategy is that the province legislated that the service managers responsible for housing, thank you, which in the case of this area is the county of Simcoe, have to develop 10-year housing and homelessness plans. And so back in 2014, County Council approved our community plan around the same time as Barrie was developing theirs. And then we're also responsible at the 5-year mark to conduct a review of that plan, which we have just been through that exercise. And that's in the context of some of the other policies that you can see on the screen there. You may be familiar with or have heard of the Ontario Housing Supply Action Plan, which is something that the province released earlier this year, aimed at increasing the supply of housing in general, not necessarily affordable housing, but including affordable housing. And as well, the federal government 2 years ago introduced a national housing strategy, which has a variety of policies and programs and funding, all aimed at increasing housing, and there is certainly a focus on affordable housing within that. So our strategy is underpinned by a set of best practices. It's a commitment to a range of affordable housing options, because housing exists along a spectrum, right from one end to someone who literally doesn't have a home, through emergency shelters and transitional housing, social and affordable housing, and then at the other end, market rental and home ownership. So our strategy seeks to address needs at all points along that spectrum. And it's called a community strategy because we recognize that that it depends on the community to deliver on it. There's no way that just the county or the city can fill the affordable housing needs. So it takes collaboration from the private, the non-profit, and the public sectors in order to do this. And we do include within that a focus or an element of looking at the goal of ending homelessness using that housing first philosophy that the Mayor and Andrea have already mentioned, where the idea of that is that you try and house someone first and then build the supports they need around them to ensure successful tenancies. The 10-year strategy is broken up into 3 implementation phases. So phase 1 ended at the end of 2017. We're now in phase 2, and phase 3 will be for the final 3 years to 2024. So in terms of the 5-year review that I mentioned, we took a look at available data this year across a range of metrics you see there, and they all confirmed, which wasn't a surprise, the continued need for an increased supply of affordable housing, particularly rental. And this will be achieved through a variety of methods. So it will include new construction. It will also include rent supplements, which are subsidies that can be paid direct to a landlord or to a tenant to help them with their rent payments. Affordable home ownership. There is a home ownership down payment assistance program that some of you may be familiar with or may have been involved with some of your clients. And second suites is certainly an important pillar of the strategy. So the target is to create 2,685 units county-wide by 2024 using those various methods. So how do secondary suites fit in? Well, as has already been mentioned, they are looked at as a very scalable way to deliver on housing, and the province has identified second suites as one of the most inexpensive ways to increase the stock of affordable rental housing. You can't guarantee the rents, obviously, but by nature of their built form, there's going to be a percentage of them that will be affordable. And by second suites, we mean self-contained residential units, either within existing dwellings, so typically the basement apartments would be the most common, but it could also be a residential unit created in an ancillary structure, such as a laneway garage. I believe that there are laneways in Barrie, correct? I don't live in Barrie, so I'm not... yeah. There are a lot, is that?
Certainly, we do
Not-
have the ability to have accessory dwellings that could contain a second suite.
Okay. So under provincial legislation, under the Planning Act, municipalities are mandated in their official plan to have policies that authorise the use of additional residential units. So the use of 2 residential units in a detached house, semi-detached or row house, and a residential unit in an ancillary structure, such as a laneway we were just talking about. The Development Charges Act is being amended by the province to exempt second suites in those ancillary structures from the payment of development charges, as well as not requiring development charges in new units. They're already exempt if you're creating an additional unit in an existing house. And the province has also recently released a guide for adding a second unit in an existing house. I didn't realise there'd be so many of you here today, so I have brought a few. I've only brought 3 copies of this document with me.
It's online,
Yeah.
don't worry. We have a link for you on our website.
Yes. So how can secondary suites help your clients? Well, obviously it adds it adds an income stream for a homeowner, which can assist with their mortgage payments. It can also increase the value of the home. At the same time, it can support changing demographics. It can, by giving housing options not only for renters, but extended family, elderly parents, or live-in caregivers. And as has been mentioned as well, it helps create mixed income communities. The county has been involved in a funding program to assist with the creation of second suites for a number of years now, using federal, provincial and county funds. The way it's structured is it's a forgivable loan of up to $30,000. It's a 15-year forgivable loan, so that means as long as the terms of the agreement, which I'll be going through in the next few slides, are kept to, then there's no payment required and the loan is fully forgiven at the end of 15 years. The $30,000 is not usually supplied as a lump sum. It's flowed in increments during the life of the second suite project. So the conditions, as Andrea was mentioning, the second suite must comply with local municipal building approvals and the Ontario Building Code. The applicant, it says, must be a Canadian citizen. It's broader than that. You have to have a legal right to live in Canada, so be a landed immigrant or have refugee claimant status. The homeowner must have equity in the property, so the total of all encumbrances on title, including the second suites funds, can't exceed the market value of the home. And then the deal is that the rents must be kept affordable for a period of 15 years. And so throughout that 15-year period, there would be some basic reporting requirements on the part of the homeowner to confirm the rent levels. The homeowner is allowed to select their own tenant. The unit can be rented to family members. And there is an income limit, though, of the tenant. So they have to have an income below. It's currently $54,500. Well, now we get that number because it's based on the 60th income percentile for renter households in the county. So 60% 40% of renter households, 60% will be earning that amount or less. And this program is for residential tenancies, not short-term rentals, so people aren't supposed to be utilizing it to create Airbnb facilities. So as I mentioned, the rents are capped for 15 years, based on the average market rent for the area, and that's set by Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation during their annual survey, which should be released the middle of next month. So a bit hard to see there, but the top line will show the Barrie, Innisfil, Springwater, Esser current maximums there. So bachelor 848, 1 bed 1141, and 2 bed 1331. And there is just a shot of the link. If you go to the county website, simcoe.ca, you can follow the links to the second suites, the information pages, and application forms.
Can you explain what happens when people don't keep it for 15 years?
Yes, I guess we're moving into the question and answer. That's fine.
You're stealing my thunder.